did not yell. I did not cry. I just stood there in the parking lot of my own daughter's wedding venue, holding a gas station coffee that had already gone cold, and I made a decision. It took me about 30 seconds. Then I got in my truck and drove home. My name is not important. What matters is that I spent 41 years working for a railroad company in central Ohio, got up at 4:30 every morning, wore the same steel-toed boots until the soles came apart, and never once asked my daughter for a thank you. That is not the kind of man I was raised to be. My father worked the line before me, his father before him. We were not a family that talked about feelings over dinner. We showed up. We fixed things. We paid for things. That was love, and everybody understood it. My daughter. I'll call her my daughter because that is what she is, whatever she has decided otherwise. Her name is Renee. She's 34 years old. She has her mother's eyes and, as it turns out, very little else of her mother, who passed 8 years ago from a stroke she never woke up from. After that, it was just the two of us, Renee and me. For a long time, that felt like enough. She met her husband at a work conference in Nashville. His name is Sterling. He sells medical devices, wears shirts with no collar, and has never, in the 4 years I have known him, looked me directly in the eye when he shakes my hand. The first time I met him, Renee told me beforehand, "Dad, just be normal, okay?" I didn't know what that meant. I thought I was normal. I wore a clean shirt. I brought a bottle of wine, even though I don't drink wine. I said please and thank you, and I asked him questions about his work, and I listened to the answers. After dinner, driving home, I tried to figure out what I had done wrong. I never found an answer, but I kept showing up. Because that is what you do. When Renee told me she and Sterling wanted to buy a house in Dublin, the nice part of Columbus, where the school districts are good and the lawns are all the same shade of green, I didn't hesitate. They had a down payment saved, but not enough. The house they wanted was $420,000. The gap was $60,000. I had it. I had been saving since Renee was 7 years old, putting money away in a separate account I called, in my head, the someday account. I always figured someday she'd need it for college, or a surgery, or a hard year. I never imagined I'd hand it over like this, in a wire transfer, on a Tuesday afternoon, but I did it without a second thought. I told myself, this is love. This is love. This is the railroad boots version of love. I did not ask to be on the deed. I did not ask for anything in return. Sterling handled all the paperwork. He was, as Renee always reminded me, good with that kind of stuff. The wedding was planned for October, a venue outside Columbus, in the countryside. An old barn that had been renovated into something that cost $12,000 to rent for one Saturday. I know the number, because Renee mentioned it while she was telling me about the flowers. She said it like it was the price of a sandwich. $12,000 for a barn for one day. I thought about how many shifts that was at the railroad. I kept that thought to myself. I was not asked to help pay for the wedding. Sterling's parents were covering it, and I understood that. I was glad, actually. I told Renee I would cover my own travel and the rehearsal dinner, which I did, booked a private room at a steakhouse in Worthington, invited both families, paid for everything. Sterling's mother complimented the bread rolls. Sterling spent most of the dinner talking to his college friends at the other end of the table. The morning of the wedding, I woke up early in my motel room. I had booked myself a room at a Hampton Inn, about 6 miles from the venue, modest place, clean. And I put on the suit I had bought specifically for this day, navy blue. I had gone to a men's warehouse in April and told the young man there that I needed something for my daughter's wedding. He spent 40 minutes helping me. I gave him a $20 tip because he was patient and kind, and I wanted to acknowledge that. I drove to the venue at 11:30 for a noon arrival, which was what the invitation said. I want to be precise here because the details matter. The invitation, which I still have in my truck's glove compartment, said, ceremony begins at 1 o'clock. Family arrival, noon. My name was on that invitation. I have the envelope. There was a woman at the entrance, young, headset on, clipboard, and when I gave her my name, she ran her finger down her list and her expression changed. Not dramatically, just a small flicker, like a light bulb deciding whether to stay on. She said, "1 moment please," and she walked away with her clipboard and her headset, and she was gone for about 4 minutes. I stood in the driveway in my navy suit holding a card I had made, not bought, made, with my own handwriting 2 pages, and I waited. When she came back, there was a man with her. Not Sterling, someone who worked at the venue by the looks of it. He said very politely that there had been a seating situation and that they were working through some logistics and that it might be better if I waited in the parking area for a short while. I said, "I'm the father of the bride." He nodded like I had said something neutral, like I had told him the weather. I waited in the parking area. 35 minutes passed. I know because I watched the clock on my phone. At 12:47, I saw Sterling come out of a side door of the barn. He was in his tuxedo. He looked good. I'll give him that. He walked toward me with his hands in his pockets and a smile that did not reach his eyes, and he said, "Hey, so Renee's a little overwhelmed today. You know how she gets." I said, "I don't know what that means." He said, "She just thinks it might be less stressful if you watched the ceremony from over here." He gestured toward a roped-off area near the back of the property. White folding chairs, a monitor on a stand showing a live feed from inside. We set up a viewing area for some of the Overflow guests. I looked at the monitor. I looked at Sterling. I said, "Overflow guests." He said, "It's not a big deal, she just." I said, "I wired $60,000 to your joint account 14 months ago." He stopped talking. I said it again, not louder, just clearer. "I wired $60,000 to your joint account. I paid for the rehearsal dinner. I drove here from Marysville this morning in a suit I bought in April. I have a card in my hand that I wrote by hand." I paused. "I am her father." Sterling looked somewhere past my shoulder. He said, "I know, and she loves you, but today is it's a loss of pressure for her, and she asked me to." "Is she embarrassed of me?" I asked. He didn't answer fast enough. I nodded. I put the card in my jacket pocket. I picked up my coffee from the hood of my truck. I said, "Tell her I hope she has a beautiful day. I mean that." Then I got in my truck and I drove back to the Hampton Inn, and I sat on the edge of the bed in my navy suit and I looked at the wall for a while. I did not cry. I want to be honest. I came close. There was a moment where it moved through me like a wave, that particular grief that has no name, the kind that comes when you realize something you believed about your life is not true. I had believed I was going to walk my daughter down the aisle. I had believed that for 34 years. I had a whole picture of it in my head, clear as a photograph. Her hand in the crook of my arm. The weight of her dress. The way she would maybe look up at me right before we reached the altar. I sat with that for a while. Then I changed out of my suit. I hung it carefully on a hanger. I ordered a club sandwich from room service. I turned on a college football game with the volume low. And I thought about $60,000. Here is what I want people to understand. I am not a vindictive man. I have never been. I believe in letting things go. I believe in grace. My wife believed in grace more than anyone I ever knew, and I have tried to honor that in the years since she died. But there is a difference between grace and being a fool, and I sat with that difference for a long time in that motel room. The $60,000 was a gift. I knew that. There was no contract, no agreement, no paperwork with my name on it. I had given it freely. That money was gone, but I had also been making a monthly contribution, a transfer of $800 into a household account that Renee and Sterling used for what they called home maintenance and shared expenses. I had set that up automatically about a year ago, after Renee mentioned that the furnace had gone out and they were having a tight month. I'd set it up and I'd kept sending it every single month because I thought that was what a good father did. Help when you can. Don't make a fuss. When I got home the next morning, I sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop and my coffee, and I cancelled the transfer. I did not send a message. I did not call. I just opened my bank's website, navigated to the recurring transfers, found the one labeled Renee Home, and I clicked cancel. The system asked me if I was sure. I said yes. The system said the next scheduled transfer, which had been set for the 15th, would not go through. I closed the laptop. I refilled my coffee. I went out to the garage and I spent the rest of the day reorganizing my toolboxes, which is something I do when I need to think without thinking. 3 days passed. Nothing. On day 4, I got a text from Renee. It said, "Dad, we need to talk about the transfer. Did something happen with your account?" I wrote back, "Account is fine." She wrote, "The transfer didn't come through." I wrote, "I know." There was a long pause. Then, "What does that mean?" I didn't answer. Not because I was being cruel, because I didn't have words for it yet, and I wasn't going to reach for words I didn't have. That evening, Sterling called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was brief and measured. The voice of a man who was used to negotiating. "Hey, just checking in about the transfer situation. Give us a call when you get a chance. Thanks." Click. I didn't call back. The next day, Renee called. I let that go to voicemail too. In her message, she was crying, not terribly, just that thin kind of crying that happens when someone is more frustrated than sad. She said she didn't understand. She said she hoped I wasn't upset about the wedding. She said things had been really complicated, and she was sorry if things got confusing. I listened to it twice. 2 days after that, she called again. This time she was not crying. She said, "Dad, the mortgage payment is due in 10 days. We need that transfer. Please just call me." I sat with the phone in my hand. I called her back that evening. The conversation lasted almost an hour. I want to tell it carefully because I am not proud of all of it, and I want to be fair to both of us. She said she loved me. I said I loved her too, and I meant it. She said the wedding day had been stressful and things had gotten out of hand, and it was not her intention to hurt me. I asked her, quietly, whose intention it had been. She was quiet for a moment. She said Sterling had been worried about his family dynamic, that his parents had strong opinions about the ceremony, that there had been pressure she didn't know how to manage. I asked her, in all of that pressure, why had I been the thing she chose to move to the Overflow section? Why not Sterling's college friends? Why not someone else? She didn't answer that. I said, "Renee, do you understand what it felt like to stand in that parking lot in a suit I bought for your wedding day?" She said, "Dad, I'm not asking for an apology right now." I said, "I am asking if you understand." Long silence. "I think," she said, very quietly. I was embarrassed. I said, "Of what?" Another silence. Longer. Then, "I don't know." I have thought about that answer more times than I can count. I think it was honest. I think she genuinely didn't know, and that was almost harder than if she had given me a reason. I told her that I had thought very carefully about the transfer. I told her that I was going to keep it cancelled for now. Not forever. I didn't say forever. But for now, I said I needed some time, and I needed her to understand that what had happened at that venue was not something I could simply step over. I told her I needed to see that she understood, not just that she was sorry, but that she understood. She cried, real crying this time. She said they were going to be short for the mortgage. I said I understood, and I was sorry that was difficult, and I meant that too. She said, "Are you punishing me?" I said, "I am telling you that my help has limits. That is not punishment. That is just the truth." We stayed on the phone a while longer without saying much. Before we hung up, she said, "I wish Mum were here." I said, "Me too, baby, me too." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time in the quiet. The house has been quiet for 8 years. I have gotten used to it mostly, but that night it sat heavy. I want to be clear about what happened next, because people may think I eventually folded, or that I eventually let it go out of sentimentality. I did not right away. What happened was this. About 3 weeks after that phone call, Renee drove out to Marysville on a Sunday afternoon. She didn't call ahead. I saw her car in the driveway from the garage window, and I walked out to meet her. She was standing at the tailgate of my truck with her hands in her coat pockets. She had been crying in the car, I could tell. The kind where you try to stop before you get there and you mostly succeed. She said, "I brought you something." She held out a photograph. It was from the wedding. Someone at the venue, one of the photographers, had caught the moment where I was standing in the parking lot in my navy suit. I don't know how. I don't know why they included it in her proofs. But there I was, profile view, holding my coffee cup, looking out at the tree line beyond the venue. I look, in that photograph, like a man waiting for something that is not coming. Renee said, "I've looked at this every day since the proofs came back." I didn't say anything. She said, "I need you to know that when I saw this, I understood. For the first time, I actually understood." She paused. "I am so sorry, Dad. Not the kind where I need you to let me off the hook. The real kind." I looked at the photograph for a long time. Here is what I know about the difference between an apology that wants something and an apology that doesn't. My wife taught me that. She said, an apology that wants something still has its hand out. An apology that doesn't just stands there and takes whatever comes next. Renee's hands were in her coat pockets. She wasn't asking me to restart the transfer. She wasn't asking for anything. I put the photograph in my shirt pocket. I said, "You want some coffee?" She said yes. We went inside. It took me another month before I restarted the transfer. Half the amount. $400, not $8. We haven't talked about whether it will go back up. Maybe it will. I don't know yet. What I do know is that Sterling now looks me in the eye when we shake hands. I don't know what Renee said to him, and I have not asked. Some things you just notice and you keep to yourself. I still have the card I wrote for her, the one I carried to the venue in my jacket pocket. I never gave it to her that day. I have thought about giving it to her, and I have thought about keeping it, and I haven't decided yet. Maybe I'll give it to her someday when the moment is right. Maybe I'll give it to her on a Sunday afternoon when she's sitting at my kitchen table and the light is good and neither of us needs to say very much. Or maybe I'll just keep it in my truck's glove compartment next to the invitation with my name on it. Some things you carry, that's just the way of it. I still think about that photograph sometimes. The one where I'm standing in a parking lot in a navy suit, holding a cold cup of coffee, looking out at nothing in particular. I didn't know anyone had taken it. I didn't know it would end up in Renee's wedding proofs, or that she would look at it every single day until she finally drove out to Marysville on a Sunday afternoon to hand it to me without saying much. That photograph taught me something I didn't expect to learn at 60-something years old, that consequences are not the same thing as cruelty. I'd spent a long time confusing the two. When I cancelled that transfer, I was not trying to hurt my daughter. I want to be clear about that. What I was doing, and I have thought about this more than I can say, was refusing to pretend that nothing had happened. There is a cost to that kind of pretending. I had been paying it for years, quietly, in the way you pay for things you never put a name to. The moment I stopped paying it, everything shifted, not because I had punished anyone, but because reality finally had room to breathe. What I have come to believe is this. The way we treat people is a seed, and seeds do not ask permission before they grow. Sterling had spent 4 years looking past me at handshakes. Renee had spent years managing her embarrassment instead of her integrity, and I had spent years sending $800 a month into an account that belonged to people who had quietly decided I was less than what I was. Every one of those choices grew into something. The wedding parking lot was just the day the harvest arrived. I am not a wise man in the way people mean when they say wise. I cannot quote philosophers. I never finished college. What I know, I learned from 41 years of early mornings and a woman who died too soon and a daughter I am still, very slowly, figuring out how to know. But I do believe that the character a person builds over a lifetime, the daily choices about what they will and will not accept, what they will and will not say, what they will do when nobody is watching. That character is the only thing that holds when everything else falls apart. Renee came back to me, not because I pressured her. She came back because somewhere inside her, the part of her that knew better finally got loud enough to hear. That part had always been there. Her mother put it there. I watched her put it there, in 100 small moments, across 30 years. It just needed space to work. I restarted the transfer at half the amount, not because I was buying anything, because I chose to. There is a difference between help that comes from fear and help that comes from a free decision, and I am old enough now to only give the second kind. Some days I think about taking that handwritten card out of the glove compartment. Some days I think I'll keep it there until the right moment finds me. Either way, I am not in a hurry. I have learned, finally, at this age, that the most important things do not need to be rushed. They just need to be true.